The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Jesus said to his disciples, I have come to set the earth on fire, and how I wish it were already blazing. There is a baptism with which I must be baptized, and how great is my anguish until it is accomplished. Do you think that I have come to establish peace on the earth? No, I tell you, but rather division. From now on, a household of 5 will be divided, 3 against 2, and 2 against 3. A father will be divided against his son, and a son against his father, a mother against her daughter, and a daughter against her mother, a mother-in-law against her daughter-in-law, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. The Gospel of the Lord. My dear friends, in a world gone wrong like ours, spinning out in the wrong direction in so many ways, admittedly, those who come speaking the truth and embodying the truth on behalf of God are going to be opposed. Authentic religion stirs up opposition necessarily because we are a fallen race, meaning that we tend to want things that are bad and wrong, and we tend not to want things that are good and right. If a religious figure is universally popular, it is a huge red flag, because it indicates that the truth is not being spoken, at least not in its entirety. One of the things that an older priest told me when I was first assigned to a parish after the seminary was, it's always good to step back and ask yourself whose needs are getting met, because the minister has needs too, to be liked and even loved by his people. But if he truly is speaking the word of God, would he really be that popular? We can look at Jeremiah, for example, the prophet, who is extremely reluctant when God taps him on the shoulder and says, I want you to be my man. And so Jeremiah gives the lame excuse that he is too young. The Lord is not buying it. He has made his choice, and he is going to stick to it. The principal message that Jeremiah is giving in today's reading as a background is that Israel should surrender to the Babylonians because of the circumstances at hand. And so the king, Zedekiah, is saying that he should be put to death because apparently he's not interested in the welfare of the people, but rather in their ruin. He is demoralizing the troops. King Zedekiah buckles under the public pressure. He's yours to deal with, he tells the people. And so they throw him into a well, a cistern, amidst the mud, and they leave him there to die. Jeremiah is speaking God's word, and he's doing so in a clarion call. The whole of society really turns against him. We too oftentimes feel like society is turning against us as Christians. those so-called hot-button issues that we hear about constantly: abortion, euthanasia, capital punishment, gun violence, the militarization of our world and our own country. We hear people speaking not in favor of the poor or the sick or the immigrants, but rather to protect those who have vast wealth beyond any measure of counting, against those who are seemingly poorer and poorer. Would we be listened to with honor and deference if we really stood up and denounced those things that are standing in the way of the kingdom? Of course, if we do, and we have, and we will continue to do so, we will be met by aggressive opposition. It is the order of the day, none more so than our increasingly secularized culture. We hear about churches which once were the pride of the community being let to dilapidate and fall apart. Even worse, they are being attacked and defaced. Sometimes statues of our most honored saints, including our Blessed Mother, are decapitated and otherwise destroyed. We see vile things written on our church walls on behalf of a culture that doesn't seem to want God or to be involved in His way of life. And so the gospel today has Jesus saying that He has come to cast fire upon the earth, and that He wishes that it were already ablaze, which would give us a shiver, those who live in the land of fire. Only a couple of years ago, the terrible, fearsome fires that burned and so close to home, lapping up almost against our front doors, some people even losing property and worse. As we watch these fires blazing in the efforts to try to put them out, which seem to be so inadequate. One time I looked out in my backyard, I could see the flames coming from Lagoon Valley. And I saw the smoke and flames on the other side of the freeway from my bedroom window. Almost looked like Lowe's was going to catch fire and burn up. And if I saw one puff of smoke coming from Lowe's, I would have been in my car without even grabbing a toothbrush. Only a block and a half from our house was the evacuation line. And so we know the power of fire all too well. And we know that we must respect that power. But now, a couple of years later, after the scorched earth, we see the brush now being removed, that there is a fresh new beginning. At least we hope there will be when it starts to rain again, and we hope it will start to rain again. We see that the land has been cleared of this useless, dead brush. In a way, Jesus, too, wants to burn away the dead brush of our lives, of our world, the built-in hatred and prejudice, the cruelty that we're capable of, the self-absorption and selfishness that is so evident in our world, the old grudges that we bear, which is one of my great sins. This old pattern of sinfulness that we refer to as addictions, the strange draw to finding comfort in things that are destroying us at the same time, things that are God, not of God, but godless, things that stand in for God which can never do so. Those things keep us from renewal. And so Jesus wants to burn away the chaff so that the good grain can take root in the soil. Jesus has not come to ride the crest of the wave into the sunny day, but rather he has come to set the world ablaze. But wait a second, isn't Jesus the Prince of Peace that we celebrate during the year, especially at Christmas and Easter? Yes, he is, but we know that in order for there to be true peace and harmony, the old patterns must be broken down. The things that are barriers to his peace, the facades of deception that speak of the hidden corruption that are behind them. Honestly, we must try to be open to the trouble that would come if we really embrace the gospel, because we know that we have to struggle in this world in order to break the ground and lay the foundations of unity. We have to uncover and speak about those things that are not helping the cause. Even in a household, Jesus tells us that a father will be set against a son against a father, a mother against a daughter against a mother. Sometimes faith, which used to be, it seems, a unifying force in our families, oftentimes now can be a dividing force because of the pressure that so many young people in particular are under to abandon the faith. But we know that that is a wrong way to go, without a doubt. So let's not get carried away. Sometimes people will say to us, we have a great need ourselves sometimes to tame the unleashed power of the gospel of the Lord and the living Spirit that came upon the first disciples like tongues of fire in order to prompt them, provoke them, and prod them into action. We have come today to hear this gospel. We have to take the whole thing, not just the times when we hear about love triumphing over evil, but also when we hear of Jesus' own desires that we be truly his sons, or rather his brothers and sisters, following his way. There needs to be trouble sometimes before there can be peace, and these words are often at the bottom of it. As Carmelites this last week, we celebrated a great and wonderful saint of our order of the Discalced branch, St. Edith Stein, St. Teresa Benedicta of the Cross, who was a Jewish convert and a great philosopher, a great intellect of her day, starting out as a young woman, an atheist. She read the story of Teresa of Avila, her autobiography, in fact, and she decided that this was the truth, and she became a Carmelite nun. She was hunted down by the Nazis, and because of her Jewish heritage, she was put to death with her sister, Rosa, also a nun, in the concentration camp of Auschwitz. But her memory will not be forgotten. She is now a patroness of Europe and an inspiration for so many modern people, that we do not give up our intellectual pursuits, our philosophical learnings in order to be a Christian, but rather those things can work hand in glove. These words of Jesus really are a pain in the neck if we admit it. They sometimes level out prudent heads, and middle-of-the-road minds are no longer able to avoid the challenge. They are always a threat, and they always have been, and they always will be. In a world that we live in, even in the church, the authority that is sometimes misused so badly, these words can turn the world upside down. But the Gospels also contain the way of love and forgiveness. Yes, they do. Admittedly, we see clearly that the love and unity Christ offers us are at odds with the counterfeits of those things that we so easily coin and exchange. If Christ's peace really takes hold of us, it brings an interior freedom and integrity like we see in Jeremiah or Edith Stein that makes us dangerous to the status quo and divisive, especially if we refuse to be bought off or intimidated. So often in the culture we live in, we see in politicians who are elected to represent us the letting go of the moral principles that we hold most dear and we know are the most true. We live in a culture that demands moral accommodations, but it comes at a great cost because we oftentimes see how we have fallen short of God's law and God's way. Sometimes even we can enshrine sheer evil in law from the highest sources. We sometimes forget the lessons of history when we look back during World War II on the fascist states and totalitarian governments that had no higher law than what was good for the state according to those who wielded the power over the people. Christ's peace does not come cheap. He paid for it with his suffering unto death, even death on a cross. The love of Christ is selling us the fire, the stuff of the fire, the stuff of the fire of conflict, both with others and within our own hearts, because it is competing, this love that Christ offers, this selflessness, it is competing with the love of money or territory, or even our allegiance to family and tribe over that of our other brothers and sisters. This love is so much more than the spark of fleeting passion for the refining blaze of the covenant faithfulness that Christ has called us to is ultimately the way to salvation, the way to freedom, and the way to life. Christ endured all he did and does so that we would not lose heart. And so today we are reminded that we are surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses, those who have gone before us and who have triumphed over the evil of their time and have set for us so great an example. In such wonderment, we can only be in awe of the way that God worked through their lives and through their ministries. So let us not grow weary, but let us persevere in running the race and all the while keeping our eyes fixed on him who endured so much to win the day, to win the victory, the crown, the glory, and the endless joy that awaits us.